Hey everyone, this is Turf MD, and today I'm going to talk about mowing. Specifically, I'm going to talk about how to manage mowing heights on golf course putting greens to get them really, really fast. How do you lower the height so that you achieve the green speeds that you want while not doing any physical damage to the turf along the way? I was lucky enough to work at Wingfoot Golf Club in Mamaroneck, New York in the year 2000 for my internship. And when I worked there, I was working for basically the best superintendent on the planet, whose name is Mr. Paul Latshaw. So for anyone out there who doesn't know Mr. Latshaw, he is the be-all and end-all when it comes to turf management. He's the Bobby Jones, Jack Nicklaus, Tiger Woods, all wrapped up into one. He was the superintendent who started mowing turf really, really low, and he was the first one to basically figure out how to mow your greens really low and still keep them alive and healthy. Without him, we may not have green speeds that we've got today, but he was the guy that figured it out. So working for him at Wingfoot was an absolute pleasure, and I just can't express how much Mr. Latshaw taught me. I guess when you work for the leader in your industry who's an absolute genius, as long as you're somewhat motivated, you can't help but learn a whole lot. So basically everything I'm going to talk about in terms of lowering the mowing height is I learned from Mr. Latshaw. So starting off the season, when he first started mowing his greens, he started at a height of 0.140, which is 140 thousandths of an inch. We used to measure mowing heights back in the day in fractions, eighth of an inch, 5/16, etc. Today we are much more accurate and specific with by using decimals. So he started his season at 0.140, 140 thousandths, which I thought was pretty high. I thought it's a very high mowing height for modern greens. But I didn't know what was to come. So what he did, which was absolutely brilliant, just genius on his part, was started the year off at 140. And then every 7 to 10 days, he would lower the height 3 thousandths of an inch. 7 to 10 days later, he'd lower the height 3 thousandths of an inch. So he went from 140 to 137 to 134 to 131, etc. Slowly, steadily lowering the mowing height over time, allowing the turf to adjust. 3 thousandths of an inch is almost imperceptible, but I think that's what he was going for. And he wanted to make imperceptible. The change is so minor that you can't even tell, so that the turf wouldn't, receive any physical damage. It doesn't go into, stress. It's a slow, gradual process that allows the turf to adjust, and it happens over time. Didn't happen overnight, happened slowly. But it got to a point where those greens were lightning, absolute lightning fast. For anyone that's played Wingfoot, anyone that's aware of Wingfoot greens, they're severely, severely undulating. So anytime you get any sort of decent green speeds on those greens, the downhill putts are lightning fast, absolute lightning fast. So easy to putt the ball right off the green. Get a little downhill putt, tap it, off the green, bye-bye. So I thought that was really, really cool. I thought that was, beyond cool. It was genius, the way Mr. Latshaw managed his mowing heights, slowly lowering them over time. Another thing that he did in terms of mowing height management was he would stop lowering the height if we got into periods of excessive rain. Now, the year 2000 was pretty rainy up in Mamaroneck, New York. And we got to periods where it was excessively wet. Now, the problem with Wingfoot at that time was that they had push-up native soil greens. It wasn't a USJ sand-based green that drains like a sieve. It was the native soil that was located in that area that was basically used to make putting surfaces. So the underlying soil was just held onto water like a sponge. So when you get into rainy, wet periods, the greens would be really, really soft and wet. During those times, Mr. Lacho wouldn't lower the height. He wouldn't lower the height when the greens were sopping wet. Doesn't make any sense, right? And I think there was one time he may have raised the height just a little bit because the greens were just so saturated. So yeah, Mr. Lacho was the guy that taught me how to manage mowing heights. And you can basically apply that to fairways, tees, collars, approaches. With those mowing heights, you're going to be at higher heights. So let's say you're at a mowing height of like a 0.40, 400 thousandths in your approaches. You might be able to lower that 10 thousandths, 15 thousandths of an inch at a time. Because lowering those heights 5 thousandths at a clip, it's going to take you a long time to get down to whatever your desired mowing height is. So with higher heights, you could probably get away with slightly larger increases or decreases in mowing height in terms of decimal points, but it's still going to be a small percentage of the overall height that you're going to lower it at each time. So one of the things that I did here at Ashwood Golf Course is basically the same thing. I came into the season, I started mowing the greens. My first full season, the beginning of my first full season, I started mowing the greens at about 130 thousandths of an inch. And I lowered them 5 thousandths of an inch until I got to 100 thousandths. So we lowered them from 130 to 125, 120, etc. 5 thousandths of an inch at a time until I got to 100. Because each time I lowered the height, I felt like the turf was very, very willing to be mowed at that next lower height. It was very, very ready for it, basically. So I felt like as we were lowering the height, the turf was adjusting really, really well, and there wasn't any physical stress, wasn't any physical damage, no scalping being done. So it's you basically, the ideal is to have a slow transition to where the greens are eventually almost so fast that they're unputtable. At least that's kind of what I'm looking for. I want most of the members and all my guests to come to me and say, Joe, we don't know what you're doing with the greens, but they're absolutely like so fast that they're unputtable. And I putted it off the green, down the approach, and into a bunker. And I think that's just hysterical. But that's my goal, to get the greens super duper fast. And you do that slowly, steadily over time. Don't rush. Don't try and do it overnight, because you're just going to slow up the process. You're going to create more harm than good, and you're going to start moving backwards. So anyone that wants to get super, super duper low mowing heights out there, do it slowly, steadily, over time. Allow the turf to adjust. And as a final note, I'd like to thank all the golfers at Ashwood for their continued positive feedback. You guys are great. It's just so funny how you get the golf course in decent shape and everyone is just like incredibly happy. And Mr. Lacha, if you ever get a chance to watch this video, thank you for teaching me basically everything I know. All the tips and tricks and basic fundamentals that I learned watching you basically set me up for success over the last 20 years. So for that, I cannot thank you enough. So I think we'll call that a day. Hopefully, someone out there got something out of this video, and see you guys soon.